Trinidad and Tobago, vibrant, diverse, and full of potential. As we journey towards our nation's 100th anniversary, one movement is paving the way for a sustainable and united future.
ourPARTT is a movement, a vision, and a collective of passionate individuals working to ensure Trinidad and Tobago thrives for generations to come.
In just under 40 years, Trinidad and Tobago will mark a milestone: 100 years as an independent nation. But what will our nation look like at 100? What legacy will we leave behind for future generations?
TT 100 is about building a shared vision for Trinidad and Tobago's centennial. Through national consultations and widespread education, we will shape the future of our nation together.
SPRI is an independent citizen-led think tank, a space for revolutionary and diverse minds to collaborate on innovative solutions for the future of our country.
Inspire 360 focuses on empowering our youth to lead Trinidad and Tobago's sustainability efforts, aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
The Pansu Collective draws inspiration from the Panchayat Susu models, creating a center of excellence for civil society to empower communities and foster unity.
Just TT is an academy for real leaders, individuals committed to social justice, equity, and ethical governance. Here, we cultivate leaders who will fight for inclusion and fairness in every sphere of society.
Land of And is a multimedia campaign celebrating national pride, unity, and diversity, fostering a win-win mindset that positions Trinidad and Tobago at its best.
Join us in building Trinidad and Tobago's future. Together, we can make a difference.
If you do your part, and I do my part, then together we will do our part.
So that is a brief introduction to what ourPARTT is. We are a civil society movement in Trinidad and Tobago. And that's some of the stuff that we're looking to do. And we have 6 major projects. One of them being the Pansu Collective, which is what this grant writing proposal is all about. So let's move on. Again, welcome to the newcomers. So here we are today at the grant writing proposal. It is being presented by Stephanie Lumley, who we will introduce a little later into the presentation. In the meantime, my name is Anarian Mason, and I am the COO here at ourPARTT, or one of the co-founders as well. And a little bit about me and why I am here is that I would like to make a difference in Trinidad and Tobago. We want to do things that highlight the good as opposed to the negativity. I personally love helping people, love seeing progress, innovation, technology. And a little bit about myself. I have over 10 years experience in the oil and gas sector. I am a project manager by profession as well. I have studied multiple courses and degrees, diplomas. I always believe in progress moving forward. One of my most favorite quotes, who anyone knows me will tell you, is that I aspire to inspire before I expire. And I will now introduce the CEO of ourPARTT, who is Rudolph Anamji. He's also one of the mad scientists behind the entire project. Rudolph?
Thank you so much, Anarian, and welcome to everyone. Thank you for taking your time to accept this invitation to really upskill yourself and improve your chances of growing your NGO or social enterprise. As Anarian said, that is exactly why this NGO in its own right was created. The name, of course, tells you exactly what we are about. We want to be a meeting ground, a community space for people, specifically in Trinidad and Tobago, but ultimately throughout the wider region, who are committed to ensuring that there is accountability and representation in public sector governance matters. Because at the end of the day, once we are clear about our purpose, we will attract the right people and together we can define the appropriate policies that will take our region and our countries forward in a sustainable manner. And years ago, when I began my advocacy work, a quarter of a century ago, actually, I knew then what I still know now, that civil society is the cornerstone for progressive and people-centered development. And if you could just advance to the next slide, Anarian, so that our attendees can take in a bit of the, the if I can say, the technical components of what I'm talking about. My passion really lies in ensuring that we collaborate effectively and create synergies amongst each other so that we can solve some of the governance issues that face us. Too often, democracy don't work and function fully because, of course, there are many people in society who are stuck in survival mode. There are thousands of persons who are vulnerable and at risk. And as I said, 25 years ago, I saw firsthand as a member of one of those communities how easily you can be ignored, or you can spend a lot of energy and time trying to change things on your own, but without the right ecosystem and support. 25 years later, some of those things still haven't changed. So the idea of creating this organization was really founded along participatory democracy lines, and where people, like some of us on this call, if not all of us, can utilize whatever privileges and perspectives that we have to push the envelope forward. And on the next slide, you will get a sense of, as Anarian said, how we have brought 6 distinct projects together to build out this ecosystem where we're really bringing civil society, individuals, and the private sector together to create the pressure and the vehicle, if you will, that will positively influence national policy. And these 6 projects really begin by creating a shared vision for our country. So if I were to ask you, what would you like Trinidad and Tobago to look like when it's celebrating its 100th anniversary of independence? You perhaps would say that you want a community where everything works and people are safe and children are able to fulfill their potential. And once you have that shared vision, you now have to find mechanisms to implement policies and initiatives that will help us achieve that vision. And that's why the other 5 projects are important. And today, as Anarian said, the PANSU Collective is the project under which workshops such as these and other initiatives will be held. Because if we're able to bring civil society together in an effective manner, then we can not only solve some of the problems that you all face, because truth be told, if some of the social ills are solved, many NGOs and CBOs would have to rethink their purpose, because at the end of the day, they may not be necessary. And that's probably a good problem to have. And the PANSU Collective will draw upon the other projects. So the I360 project, which looks at the SDGs, will help identify the gaps in society, how far are we away from achieving our SDGs. The Just CT Leadership Academy will allow us to train young and young at heart people to take up leadership roles, to implement the ideas that the think tank, this free think tank creates, to help us close those gaps that the I360 will identify. But we have to effectively collaborate with civil society. So on the next slide, you will understand that the PANSU Collective draws its model from 2 very successful ancient models, which are the Panchayat and the Susu models. where our ancestors were able to co-create the type of mechanisms and empowerment that they required to drive development and to ensure intergenerational wealth, and that communities were the ones solving their own problems. In other words, why defer to those people who hold public office when we have some of the solutions and the capacity to solve our own issues if we could help them listen more effectively and to follow our command. So today's session really is about providing skills that some of you all need to ensure that your social enterprises, your social interventions can be fueled and funded more effectively. And our hope is that you will join us as registered members of the Pantsu Collective, and you will assist us in building out some of the other initiatives that we'd like to see. And it's our expectation that the Center of Excellence that we create here at the Pantsu Collective under the ourPARTT umbrella will help us to ensure that you are sustained and that the problems you are trying to solve are in the short term resolved, so that we can put your efforts, your capacity, your brilliance into other types of activities rather than in a constant cycle of trying to solve problems that, again, if the public sector listens more effectively, we would have already resolved them. So thank you again, and I really want to congratulate Anarian and thank Stephanie for driving this entire process. And we are so grateful that you have joined us, and we hope that you'll find the session of value to you. And we'll talk afterwards and engage with you further. So remember, if I do my part and you do your part, then together we can do our part to build a better Trinidad and Tobago. So thanks, Anarian, back to you.
Thank you, Rudolph. And not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but we have persons from around the Caribbean here and even the United States, so we can build a better world. Moving on, our facilitator for today will be Stephanie Lumley, who's the founder of Carib Creatives Consulting. Now, this bio doesn't do her justice because she does so much, and she's such an amazing young woman out of Jamaica, where her passions lie with mental health, helping persons, looking at zero hunger, zero poverty, climate change, gender equality, and so many more of the 17 goals. I don't think if I need to stay here and discuss all that she does, we'll be here for hours upon hours. Before I hand over to her, I just want to do a quick reminder that we do have a part 2 to this workshop, which is a communications-based workshop taking place this Sunday in Sharonas at W Studio. It would have been on the form that you would have signed on to. And with much ado, I hand over to Ms. Lumley.
Thank you. That is quite a welcome. Thank you, everyone. I am so honored to be able to share some upskilling information around grant funding with everyone. I'm so sorry that I'm not able to be face to face with everyone, but I'm gonna do my best. All right. So again, my name is Stephanie Lumley. I am from the beautiful island of Jamaica, and I am very, very excited to talk about grants with everyone here. I don't want to cause chaos, but maybe you can write it in the chat. Has anyone heard of grant funding before? Is this a completely new thing for you? And if you do know anything about grants, what comes to mind? What's the first thing that comes to mind? Okay, so I'm seeing comments coming in. Not new. All right, Sophia. Tamu says that she knows about it. It's often tedious, Yes, that is true. Suriname's, oh, I'm so sorry. Ricardo said that it's completely new. So this is an interesting mix. I'm gonna do my best to kind of break it down so everyone kind of understands the whole world of funding. Anarian, can I go ahead and just share my screen? I can go ahead and share my
Sure. Just let me give you access. All right, you have access, Steph.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Oh, more comments. So Stanley said that he's heard about it. Seems like a hit or miss process. Yeah, I mean, I can see where you're coming from because it's not a guarantee, and we'll get into that a little later. And Jillian says, yes, she knows about grant funding and it's free money. That is my favorite part of grant funding. So I'm with you, Jillian. But let me just go back to basics. I'm going to share my screen. All right, so Anarian did a wonderful job with introducing me, so I don't need to do it again. So let me just use. All right, so this workshop, the aim of what I'm doing here for the next hour and a little bit is really to kind of shine a light on grant funding, the fact that it's a $1 billion industry in the US alone. So it's a $1 billion industry there as well as around the globe. And most grant funding comes from the global north and the global south, not to get too much in politics. The global south lags quite a bit behind of the global north in terms of access to grant funding, but it's not an impossible way to get well-needed financial support. No, this workshop, I'm hoping to empower everyone here, whether you are working in an NPO or NGO, whether you are in a startup environment, whether or not there's a project that has amazing social impact and you believe in it and it is something that has measurable ROIs or return on investment, this workshop is for everyone, all right? Now, one of the things that as a grant writer for the past 4 years, really, like I've been focusing on helping NGOs, startups, different SMEs to get grant fit for applications as well as being awarded, because it's one thing to write a brilliant proposal. It's another thing to actually execute the project successfully. One of the things that I've found over the past years that really helps to set you up for success or to be a suitable organization for grant funding is championing sustainability. There are 17 sustainable development goals that has been established by the UN. You can Google it. There's lots of infographics and lots of breakdowns. But I find that focusing on Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs 1, 5, 8, and 17, to be the most useful to access grant funding from agencies all over the world. Could be government agency, could be private agencies. There's a big opportunity there for tech startups, environmental startups, NGOs to align your business missions or your organization's missions to be ready to receive grant funding. All right. So what are SDGs 1, 5, 8, and 17? So number 1 is no poverty, right? So say you have an NGO, and this NGO teaches financial literacy to teenage students, right? Say that you have crafted a project of teaching 200 inner city or at-risk youth financial literacy. This is something that would be very attractive to would-be grant funders for numerous reasons. One, it talks to SDG 1, Sustainable Development Goal 1, which is no poverty. In order for families, communities to be lifted out of poverty, it has to be done in a systematic way, and financial literacy is one. So if you are to find a call for proposal, for example, this project and this NGO could make quite a compelling case for grant monies. Okay, we're looking at also Sustainable Development Goal number 5, which is gender equality. So the whole point of this is to achieve gender equality, empowering women and girls to try to close the gap of gender inequality across it goes across the board. I think the last report that the UN had shared, we're about, if I'm not mistaken, about 100 years of sustained work in that regard to have gender parity across the region. So there is quite a bit of work to do, which in turn makes probably a project that tries to close the gap on gender equality by 10%, by 15%, something that would be quite attractive for funders to invest some grant monies in. SDG 8, which is decent work and economic growth, right? So the breakdown for this is promoting inclusive and sustainable, keyword here is sustainable economic growth, employment, and decent work for all. And the last one mentioned is SDG 17, which is partnerships for the goals. And this is basically to revitalize a global partnership for sustainable development. And I wanted to pay attention to two keywords in SDG 17. One, partnership, and two, sustainable or sustainability. If you're able to weave these concepts into your mission, into the culture of your organization, you will find more and more or increased opportunities for grant funding based off of what I have worked with clients from the United States, Grenada, Jamaica, as well as Trinidad and Tobago. All right. So what is, sustainability, and what is this talk about aligning with the Sustainable Development Goals? What this helps to do is for you to, with your organization, to kind of get on the same page as many organizations are in the region and internationally. It helps you to have widen the net of impact from your community or your country to your region and then internationally. So there is this saying in Jamaica that we said that 2 hands can't clap, right? Which in English, one hand can't clap. Sorry. So in English, it's literally saying, sometimes it takes a team to achieve something great, right? So you kind of need your partners. And in this case, it's great to start looking maybe to another country, another continent for to explore partnership opportunities. Okay. I want to just also go into crafting a winning proposal. So we talked about sustainability, we talked about the keywords. I want us to go into understanding grant proposal components, right? So you come across a grant, the money looks very attractive. There's a Caribbean Biodiversity Fund call for proposals on right now, and the least amount of monies they are willing to grant is $400,000 US. No, I don't know about you, but I can use $400,000 US right now in my organization. It's something that is backed by the European Union, and it's mainly targeted to organizations in the blue and green economy. So if you want, you can note, if you want to know more about that grant funding opportunity, you can go to Google, go visit Caribbean Biodiversity Fund and get more information to see if this is something that is suitable for you, right? I also was able to help some Grenadian clients of mine last week to go for the OECS grant matching opportunity. That was 25,000 US each that they were applying for. So I raise these cases to say there's normally something open and something that you can, depending on how ready you are, and we will go into what that the requirements there. But if you can align your mission and if you can be aware of the sustainable development goals and align to 1, 5, 6 SDGs, then you're on your way to being a lean, mean grant application machine, right? So let's talk about the grant proposal components. Depending on the grant that you're going for, you typically have a budgetary section, you have an executive summary or a breakdown of what the organization is aiming to do with very specific objectives and very detailed goals, because keep in mind that this is not a loan. Grant funding is not a loan. It is monies that once you get it, you don't have to pay back, you don't have to give up equity, nothing of that sort. So what happened is that when an agency sends out calls for proposals, you have to show them your value proposition, you have to show them what good this can do, or what impact that this money can help this organization to achieve. So there's normally that breakdown. Sometimes there's a problem statement, but more often than not, I would encourage organizations to identify a problem and then come up with a solution and get funding for the solution, right? I don't want anybody to have an idea to say, well, okay, I can get grant funding to pay my electricity bill next month. That's not how this works. Your best bet is to identify a problem and identify the solutions and ask for funding for that. You look at your project goals. Again, using the SMART approach to listing out what it is that you're trying to do. So ensure that it's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's realistic, and it's time-bound. So for example, let's go back to the financial literacy workshop project. Workshop/project. So you want these 200 at-risk youths to come out of poverty and you want them to be a part of a 6 months incubator or accelerator. And at the end, they're going to know how to open a bank account. They're going to know the fundamentals of credit versus having savings and learning about investments. That is specific. You can't just say, oh, you want to help all the youths of South Trinidad, or you want to help the youths of Northern Grenada. That's not going to help. Like, it has to be very granular. And then what will happen is that your budget, your line items will match back to the outcomes. Everybody with me so far? Let me look in the chat. Okay. All right, great. Nice to hear. Thank you. So your grant proposal typically is comprised of your summary, your problem statement, your project goals, your methodology, your budget, and then your monitoring and evaluation plan. No, I am not entirely certain how strong we are as a region with monitoring and evaluation. That is just as important as the budget, just as important as establishing goals. It is so crucial. Why? Because a lot of these agencies, when you complete a fantastic grant application and they say, yes, they believe in what you're doing and they award you the grant, a lot of the times they will ask for you to do what in project management it calls an interim report. So you do, maybe depending on the length of your project, you do maybe 2 to 3 reports, and those reports have to show in very detailed ways when you receive the grant funding, how it is accounted for, the fact that it goes to a certain account and it pays for the line items that you put in the budget, right? So if you're looking for a pay increase, don't ask a grant agency to do that. It's not realistic. Yes, so you don't want to promise your staff to say, yes, you're going to get a 20% raise and then ask for a grant. That's not realistic. Your monitoring and evaluation plan has to include what you signed up for with the given agency. And you do not want to be in a position where you get the grant and you are not able to execute what you promised you would. Because if that falls through, it affects your chances of being awarded other grants up to 5 to 7 years in the future. So you want to ensure that you approach this thing under the guidance of someone who understands the language of the funder and can kind of be that bridge for you, right? Again, when you're putting your grant applications together, you do not just write a generic paragraph and then slap that on 2, 3, 4, 5 grant proposals. That's not how this thing works. It is important that you understand exactly what these funders are asking for. You want to read normally it's an RFP, a request for proposal or call for proposal document. You want to read that minimum 3 times, because a lot of the times people will read and then make the mistake that they understand exactly what they're asking for and sometimes will not fulfill what is in black and white. It is important that you write strong narratives. Again, you want to find a problem and you want to be able to solve it or at least close the gap of whatever the issue is or whatever it is that you want funded, right? You want to ensure that gender equality, gender parity is something that you pay attention to. There's quite a bit of men at leadership position with no women in sight on the board. There's a lot of organizations that they end up in problems because although they have written a compelling proposal, they have 80% men and 20% women. And that is something that can hurt your chances in being awarded grants. Okay? What you want to also look at from as early as possible is where you can partner, where you can collaborate with other like-minded individuals or organizations. So when you come upon a grant offer proposal that is saying we are willing to spend 200, as long as it's like six-figure US, so like 100,000 US, 200,000 US or more, up to $1 million, it is not likely that a single agency will get this amount of grant money. So just please note that. Okay, so what are the rules of grant writing and grant application? Some do's and don'ts. Again, please do not expect to apply for a grant this week and then next week you hear back from the people. That's not how it works. This is a medium-term type of revenue funnel. So given that you submit a grant application like this week, it's likely that it would take up to 3 to 4 months to get a reply to say whether or not you have been shortlisted or you have been awarded the grant. And then sometimes it may even take another 4 to 5 or 6 months for you to get the grant money in your account. So it's important to know that you do not depend on grant funding for monthly recurring expenses like your utilities, like salaries, like purchasing equipment. Those are not the expenses that you look at. You want to ensure that you build up a project, right, that has smart deliverables and that can provide a return on investment. Okay. You want to also ensure that your grammar is perfect, because if a lot of applications that go through that is riddled with grammatical errors, that will hurt your chances, right? Because what you are in turn saying to the funder is you're not willing to pay attention to the details of anything, of any agreement that they may want to have you part of, right? So I try to encourage a team of minimum 3 to work on a grant together. So you have one person that may look at the financials, then you have another person that may be the graphic artist or the person to physically put it together. And then you have somebody else who is checking, who is using, fresh eyes to ensure that the grammar is correct, ensure that everything that the funder is asking for. Normally, they will give you a checklist. So they will say, before submitting, ensure that you have this, that, and there's a list. So you can have that person check off each item before submitting. Again, any little detail can hurt your chances of getting the grant. You want to look at grant funding agencies that align with your organization, because what that means is that you guys have similar values, and you can then create even a more compelling case for funding. You want to be open to collaboration, to be open to partnerships. You want to be able to have that team mentality when you are approaching grants. It's not very often that this is a one-person show and one person writes the grant, gets the grant, executes the grant, administers the grant, does the monitoring and evaluation. It's not very often. And actually, sometimes these grant funders, they will ask to see who your board of directors are or who your team members are. And they will ask even, and I've seen it a few times, where they ask for copies of their resumes, because they have to ensure that once they're deciding to hand over grant monies, that the risk of it not being executed properly is extremely low. So what goes into writing a strong narrative? You want to look at using direct language. You want to save the adjectives and the fluff for something else, maybe a social media post. But you want to ensure that you are speaking to the requirements, that you are confident and capable of using every dollar of the grant monies that you're asking for in a way that aligns with whoever the grant funder is. So if it's the Caribbean Development Bank, ensure that you understand the pillars that they operate with. Ensure if it's the OECS, ensure that you understand that hospitality is a pillar, that tourism is a pillar, that economic empowerment is a pillar. So you write your grants in a way that you tell them that, listen, I understand what your organization do, and I am willing to partner with you to make a bigger impact. All right. So now that I understand and we've demonstrated that we know what type of projects or what type of organizations ideally have a somewhat easier time with grant funding, I kind of want to pick up and talk about highlighting sustainability. I'm not gonna put slides up again. I'm just gonna go through this part. So when you're putting your grant applications together, we talked about the concept, we talked about aligning with SDGs. Now, please keep in mind, for different grant opportunities, you don't always have to align with an SDG. It just makes it a little bit more marketable, a little bit more, you're a little more open to collaboration from agencies that are not within your country and your region. So it kind of raises the profile a little bit. You want to keep in mind that this is a time-bound project. So always have that. I think that's the main weak areas from the presentations. Not a lot of people mentioned how long this project is. So it's important to work that into your narratives, because it is important, because money is not, it's not an infinite resource. So a lot of times they want to see that, okay, it's a 3-month project, it's a 6-month project. There is no correct timeline, right? You can have something for the very short term and you can have something over years. So it depends on who you're applying to, and it also depends on how much financial resources are available, right? You want to also demonstrate in a very practical way that you understand what the funder needs from their grantees. So you don't go and read that they need 12 things on the checklist, And you in your infinite wisdom say, no, they're okay with 10. No, they're not going to care about the other two. Yes, they're very much going to care about the other two. And that is going to affect your chances of being funded. So again, remember I said you want to look at these requirements minimum 3 times. You want to ensure that you go over and you're very thorough when you are putting your applications together. Oftentimes, funders will have preliminary events such as frequently asked question documents. They will have question and answer conferences where you can join in, you can ask questions. They'll have sometimes submission of questions, and they will publish a frequently asked question on their website, or they send an email, or they send an update, and you have to download a document. Sometimes as well, these question and answer sessions or these preliminary sessions are mandatory, which means you could have done all of the work. You could have put a brilliant budget together. You would have submitted it by the deadline, and you did not attend the preliminary event, whether it's a Q&A, whatever it is, or a sensitization session, and you would have ruined your chances of being funded. So keep that in mind. It's not for every grant opportunity or call for proposals or request for proposals, but I've seen that happen time and time again. So I want to also touch on some strategies that you can use to enhance the competitiveness of your submission. Now, somebody mentioned that it's like a hit and miss, and sometimes it can feel like a lottery, meaning they are willing to give 3 businesses or organizations, say $50,000, and 500 people apply. You can just imagine just how outstanding you have to be in order to be one of those 3. And it's quite common that you will apply for 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 grants, and you don't get it, and it can be discouraging. But I like to encourage people to don't give up. Just keep at it. Hire, it doesn't have to be me, but get the help of somebody who does these things for a living. A lot of the time, if you try to take it on yourself and you don't have experience, it can be quite intimidating, at points overwhelming, and overall tedious, and you're just not encouraged to you're not encouraged to apply. So try and include a communication strategist. If you can find a grant specialist or a funding specialist, even better. But don't be afraid to outsource to put a compelling narrative together. What also works is understanding what type of projects your funder has funded in the past. So you can look and you can determine, okay, this is something that we are aligned with, or this is something that challenges our values and our mission. So that is also quite important to determine. So I want to again just talk a little bit about a success case of a completed grant application that I was recently part of. So it's 2 Grenadian entities. One is Island Innovation, based in Grenada, and the other is Marketing Hill, which is a group of boutique hotels in Grenada as well. And what I think set us up for success is that we were able to get information from the OECS's website. So what I helped them to apply for was the OECS's grant matching program. And this would be access to 25,000 US dollars for different projects. So Island Innovation came up with this project of having some community college graduates getting certified, 2 certifications actually on Salesforce. And then what that will do is to cut the time of training new hospitality workers in at least half the time. They would have come equipped and ready to use Salesforce. And also they've even upped their capacity so that they can not only be hired in the Grenadian hospitality industry, but virtually any tourism industry around the region. And actually they can go for even wider roles internationally. So that's what they had focused on. That's Island Innovation. We were able to strategize and get the documentations together in time and submitted by the deadline. Now, with Marketing Hill, I got that within 3 days, and I do not recommend anyone in this group taking on a grant 3 days before. That is definitely not a best practice. A best practice is you getting at least 2 to 4 weeks to work on one grant submission. No, I suggest this because of the work that you need to put into gathering the things and ensuring that you have everything. Now, if you're an organization and you're not registered, it makes no sense for you to submit something, because the first thing that they normally ask for is proof of registration and that you have audited financial statements at least 2 to 3 years. They normally ask for the budget, they ask for the executive summary, but more often than not, there's not one grant application that I have worked on that they don't ask for the registration documents, where they don't ask for audited financial statements. And if you don't have audited financial statements as an organization, they tend to take income statements and profit and loss statements. So maybe for 2 years, or if you are younger than that, they will possibly ask you for 1 year of bank statements, and then maybe 2 years of forecasted financials. So from you, if it is that you want to take advantage of grant funding, these are some of the things that you have to keep in mind, that they will ask, that you need to have copies that you can just upload. So you need to either scan them or take pictures and have them ready to go. You want to also take note of how you are supposed to submit the grant application. Sometimes they will have a website where they ask you to upload your documents. Sometimes they will give you an email address and tell you to send emails with this specific subject, and they can get down to the nitty-gritty. They get very detailed sometimes. They will tell you that, the text, the font, should be Times New Roman, and it needs to be 12. These things you might look at and say, oh, that's not important, and do something different. That also can hurt your chances of being awarded a grant, right? So you want to ensure that you understand that this is a competitive, very competitive industry, and it's not something that should be taken on lightly, right? If you are going to invest all of that time, it makes sense for you to do it properly. So you want to be as competitive as possible, and you want to ensure that you have a very effective team, because one person can be excellent, and if everybody else is average, then it affects your chances. You want to have an excellent team. You want to have a setup that is running as efficiently as possible. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Good evening once again, everybody. As the organizer for today's event, I want to thank every one of you all for being here and for participating. The energy and enthusiasm, especially during the question and answer and the elevator pitch, has really brought the event to life. I saw Steph smiling and laughing and very much engrossed in your presentations. I also want to extend a heartfelt thank you to Stephanie of the Carib Creative Counseling to for her passion, and this she basically was the backbone of this entire thing. Um Again, thanks to the patience, the engagement, the willingness to learn, and remember your journey doesn't stop here. Let us help you work towards building your NGO, building your entrepreneurship, both ourPARTT and Carib Creatives. You remember what Rudy said in the beginning, to register and be a part of the organization, help build something for your country. Regardless of where you are, we are willing to work with you. Um, do look out in your emails for a post-event survey that will give that you could give us some feedback, because those kind of feedbacks help us to keep events like this completely free for you guys. And again, thank you, and we look forward to the amazing things that you all will accomplish within the next couple of years.